Tonight, Victorian anger as the federal government dangles a carrot to independent schools to get kids back into the classroom. Also tonight, the hidden death toll, why the world's coronavirus count may never be accurate. The show must go on, just not this year. Melbourne's annual event hit by the COVID crisis. And no backyard blues for this rising star.
The 2020 AFL Women's Best and Fairest, Madison Pressparkers from the Carlton Football Club.
Good evening, Mary Gearin with ABC News. The debate over whether children should return to the classroom has heated up again after the federal government offered to bring forward funding to private schools. The money comes with a condition, a guarantee that the schools reopen their doors. But it sparked a furious reaction, with some private schools in Victoria calling it a bribe and saying it could endanger students and teachers. National Education reporter Connor Duffy reports.
For public school parents juggling homeschooling and a return to campuses they can't guarantee is safe, the public-private divide is a sore spot.
It just feels like a mystery as to why the money is going to schools who already have so much and so little funding is going into public schools to the point that we don't even have proper sanitation and cleaning.
The $3.2 billion funding isn't new money. It was due to be paid in July, but will now come as early as May to offset the costs of families struggling to meet fees. To be eligible to get the money early, schools must have classrooms half full by June.
We don't want parents having to choose between going to work or having to stay home to supervise their children.
Division and confusion abounds across the sector. Even independent schools are divided. The national body welcomed this, but Victorian schools savaged it as a bribe.
We welcome the initiative of bringing our normal July payment earlier. So that's the bit that we're very happy with.
This is a very attractive offer from a financial perspective, but equally I've got the safety of my staff and of my parent community to consider as well.
While the federal government's offer to private schools is modest, it's the latest in a series of moves insiders say are designed to pressure the states into reopening classrooms as soon as possible. It proved a sticking point for Victoria's Education Minister, who was asked if the funding offer amounted to a bribe.
I can understand why some people are describing it that way. What the federal government is doing is using funding to force non-government schools to ignore the expert health advice of the Victorian Chief Health Officer.
This is very confusing, very irresponsible. There's been no discussion with regards to this whatsoever with the Education Minister.
The Commonwealth insists schools are safe and wants to see them all open by the end of May.
Classroom teaching is where we need to get to, and that's what we'll be supporting independent and Catholic schools to do.
Students looking for lessons in unity won't find it in the clash over their schools. Connor Duffy, ABC News.
Joining us now from Parliament is our state political reporter, Richard Willingham. Rich, is this now the end of national unity on coronavirus?
Well, not on all matters, Mary, but certainly on schools and education there is definitely tension and deep division. Some people here in Victoria saying this cash offer is actually trying to undermine Victoria's policy. But I don't expect Premier Daniel Andrews to waver from their policy on schools. He recently reminded the Prime Minister that it was in fact states that run education. And that's something the Prime Minister later said at a press conference, that its parents should be listening to their premiers when it comes to schools. But because Victoria has the most cautious approach to coronavirus, there could be more tension on the way. Now, Victoria won't lift any restrictions before May 11. That's because it's carrying out a 2-week blitz of testing to try and test 100,000 people to get a bigger picture of just how widespread this virus may be.
And Rich, while we're waiting for that crucial data to come out in 2 weeks, what's the latest on Victorian cases?
Well, unfortunately, Mary, a woman in her 80s died in hospital yesterday, becoming the 18th fatality in the state. There was just 3 more confirmed cases overnight. 18 people remain in hospital. 9 of those are in intensive care. There's also been a scare at a Yarraville childcare centre today where parents were called to come and pick up their children because of a suspected case. Now, there is further testing going on. That case is not quite confirmed yet, but the centre is closed for 2 days while there's some thorough cleaning. Now, also out west at the Sunshine Hospital, more than 20 staff have been put in isolation after a patient who came in from a workplace accident later tested positive to coronavirus, and those tests are also ongoing.
And Rich, back on education, the state government is moving to help international students.
That's right, up to $45 million is being put on the table to help up to 40,000 international students who are struggling to make ends meet and can't access any federal benefits. Bridget Rollison reports.
Kimberly Clemencio left her marketing career in the Philippines for a better education in Victoria. But times have been tough for the Southern Cross University student since she was stood down from her hospitality job.
Currently, I am using all my savings to pay my tuition and fees.
The state government will pay students like Kimberly a one-off payment of $1,100, equivalent to about 2 weeks' worth of job seeker.
Realistically, it won't last for like 2 months.
Around a quarter of the 150,000 international students currently living in Victoria are expected to apply for the relief payments, which requires a co-contribution from universities.
They are doing it very tough. They have, in many cases, fallen through the cracks of Commonwealth programs, not eligible for JobSeeker, not eligible for JobKeeper.
Deakin University has also committed $25 million in relief and welcomed the partnership, saying it sends an important signal to students and their families back home. Monash University student Rajdeep Singh was given some relief from his uni when he lost his receptionist job, but it's drying up and he's welcomed the new funding.
It's about time, I would say, first of all. But then, it's really good that they're providing assistance.
But there are concerns the single payments may not be enough.
It needs to be continued, and sustainable. We're better to provide real support, meaning get them food, get them shelter, get them a home, get them internet.
International education is critical to the state's economy, contributing $12.5 billion each year. But with the borders closed for the foreseeable future, there are big challenges for Victoria to remain a destination for students once the crisis is over. Bridget Rollison, ABC News, Melbourne.
The strain of weeks of enforced isolation is starting to show in a grim set of statistics on the nation's mental health. The number of calls to counselling lines has risen sharply, enough to prompt the Prime Minister to order a mental health response plan. Political reporter Stephanie Dalzell reports.
To balance its books, Lifeline relies partly on fundraising to ensure its 40 call centres can operate. But COVID-19's rewriting the rules, and even charities aren't being spared.
I'm sure some of your viewers have got a bargain at the book fairs of Lifeline. Obviously, all those have ceased.
In a cruel twist, coronavirus has simultaneously cut Lifeline's revenue streams while increasing pressure on its frontline services. Calls are up by 25% on last year, and up to half of callers want to talk about coronavirus. Beyond Blue has also seen a 40% leap in calls since before the pandemic.
The stay at home has been important, but it does come with an increase in anxiety.
To combat that, the Prime Minister has tasked the National Mental Health Commission with devising a pandemic plan. It'll be modelling the mental health impacts of the coronavirus in stages, now when restrictions are eased and in the long term.
We will also look at specific priority populations. So, for instance, our elderly Australians or our youth, etc. We'll look at those issues.
There are other broader concerns too. In March alone, there were almost 5 million child abuse images shared on one dark web network, more than double the same period last year. There's also been an 86% jump in the sharing of revenge porn and a 21% rise in reports of cyberbullying, while Google searches about domestic violence have soared by 75%. The fear is those statistics will remain long after the COVID-19 crisis passes. That has the potential to leave two legacy caseloads, those who suffered during isolation and those who will need help afterwards.
People, can only hold it together for so long and they really start to break down at that point. And we're going to see very significant numbers of people in that situation, I'm afraid.
While Lifeline receives government support, it's trying to raise $5 million to help it deal with the influx of calls. answering the call that comes and doesn't stop. Stephanie Dalzell, ABC News, Canberra.
England and Wales have just recorded the most deaths in a single week since official weekly statistics began 27 years ago. It's more evidence that around the world there's a hidden death toll that's yet to be counted. Casey Briggs explains.
Dina Lewis spent her final days battling coronavirus at her aged care home in Exeter, unable to even see her family.
These guys have replaced my family. I've got 6 brothers and sisters, and I thought I'd never see them ever again.
Dina Lewis died. She was allowed her sister and daughter by her side in her final moments. But she hasn't been counted as a victim of coronavirus. Until now, it's only included people who die in hospitals.
It means far more people are dying in England and Wales than are reported. This line is the average number of deaths each week from all causes in a typical year. Now, look at this year. So far this year, more than 200,000 people have died in England and Wales, 31,000 more than usual, and that's much higher than the coronavirus death toll.
In some countries, people have died faster than they can be tested and counted. At this Spanish crematorium, funerals are being scheduled back to back.
There are normally 120 funerals each month. Last month we had 800.
Let's look at the number of deaths in Spain last year. This year, a massive jump, and 8,000 of those aren't explained by the official count. It's playing out all over the world. These are the numbers of funerals in Jakarta going back a decade. In the past 2 months, there have been 2,000 more funerals than normal. The city's official death toll to date is less than 400.
The UK is now starting to count nursing home deaths. Another number, another name to add to the toll.
Casey Briggs reporting there. The Philippines has taken some of the strictest measures in the world to contain the spread of the virus. More than 30,000 people have been arrested for violating the curfew and quarantine restrictions. But the United Nations, among others, is concerned about police brutality. Southeast Asia correspondent Amy Bainbridge reports.
In Sitio San Roque, a crowded suburb in Manila's north, social distancing isn't easy. Under strict rules enforced by the military, just one household member is allowed out at a time. Ligaya Sambayon is worried her disabled daughter's medicine will run out before she can get to the hospital again.
I was afraid because they said the weak are vulnerable. My husband has had a stroke, my daughter has a disability, so I'm the only one who goes out.
Many areas have curfews and travel is restricted. Shops are closed and food can be scarce. Earlier this month, 21 people demanding food and other help were arrested for staging a rally without a government permit. Jesus Magsayo was among them, jailed for 5 days.
Since the lockdown started, we've had no income. There's nothing we can do but wait for whoever will help us so our children will be able to eat.
They fear that as the weeks go on, more and more Filipinos will be arrested and will be thrown behind bars.
Some who've broken the curfew have reportedly been locked in a cage by local officials. President Rodrigo Duterte, whose so-called war on drugs has claimed thousands of lives, is also taking a tough line on the lockdown.
Disciplina. If you don't believe me, the military and the police will take over. I'm ordering them now to be ready.
The Philippines has just 7,500 cases officially recorded, but with limited testing so far and densely populated areas, it's feared the disease will take a larger toll. Ligaya Sambayon simply wants her family to be safe.
I wish the coronavirus would end so we can start living normally again.
Echoing the hopes of many others around the world. Amy Bainbridge, ABC News.
Well, back home, many of us will have felt the weather turn very chilly this afternoon. Paul Higgins joins me now. Paul, just how much more of this can we expect?
Well, Mary, actually, this is just the first phase of an icy blast. In fact, the coldest air will be here later tomorrow into Friday. Today, we hit a high of 20, but as those storm clouds rolled in, it plunged to 13 degrees by 2 o'clock this afternoon. And we've now had more rain in the first 4 months of the year than all of 2019. Overnight, not all that much rain, but since lunchtime today, it's barely let up. And because of that, we've now had the second wettest start to the year on record. That rain isn't over yet. And on Friday, we'll have snow right down to 800 metres elevation. I'll have more on that shortly, Mary.
Thanks, Paul. Now, still to come this hour, could raiding super now hurt you in retirement?
If a 30-year-old takes out $10,000 now, they're likely to have about $25,000 less at retirement.
I mean, it's not something I think anyone would be wise to undertake lightly.
I would argue it's more important to be able to pay your bills, put food on the table, and not have to go into massive credit card debt.
Plus, Norman Swan on what frontline doctors are learning about COVID-19. That's coming up.
Volunteer firefighters across Victoria have come together to honour the 4 police officers killed on Melbourne's Eastern Freeway a week ago tonight. CFA brigades sounded their station's sirens 4 times at 20 to 6 this evening, marking the moment last Wednesday when the 4 officers were hit by a truck. Senior Constable Lynette Taylor will be the first officer to be farewelled tomorrow, with the funeral to be live streamed for family, friends and colleagues who can't attend because of distancing restrictions. Funerals will be held for Senior Constable Kevin King and Constable Glenn Humphreys on Friday, before a service for Constable Josh Prestney on Monday. The gates of Melbourne's showground will stay shut this year, with the Royal Show put on hold for just the 3rd time in its 165-year history. It's the latest in a string of agricultural shows cancelled because of the virus, with Sydney's Royal Easter Show and the Brisbane Ekka already called off.
Royal Show preparations were already underway at Jackie Fagan's cattle stud in the Yarra Valley.
It's really sad. You spend a lot of time planning for it and thinking about it and choosing the animals that you think will do well.
But winning awards isn't the only reason she looks forward to the show.
Everybody socialises, we have a great time, we catch up, we talk cattle constantly, cattle and family.
The competitions, the rides and the show bags are a September school holiday tradition, but Victoria's Royal Agricultural Society says not this year.
They would have to start paying suppliers, making arrangements with sponsors, setting up pavilions and things of that nature, so they couldn't delay the decision any longer.
It's only been cancelled twice before, once in 1915 when the Melbourne Showgrounds were taken over for the war effort, and again between 1940 and 45 for World War II. The show has been a part of Angela Flay's family for 5 generations.
My first entry was in 1971 as a 4-year-old. It also stems back to my mother and grandmother were competitive show cooks there as well.
She says she'll miss the atmosphere, but understands the reasons behind the decision.
The safety of the community is paramount.
For the show's defending woodchop champion Glenn Gillam, it's a decision he was expecting.
It would have been terrific to be able to go back there this year and back it up.
But he'll strike back next year.
I just put it this way, we're all going to have something a little bit extra to talk about next year when we all finally get to catch up at a royal show.
COVID-19 continues to be a real showstopper. Nicole Asher, ABC News, Melbourne.
Australia Post is hopeful that delays across its network will be ironed out in the next couple of weeks as it moves to hire 600 new staff and open more than a dozen new processing facilities. Jessica Longbottom reports.
What should be a bustling restaurant in Melbourne's north is now a distribution centre sending wine across the country.
Regional Tasmania to Katherine in the Northern Territory.
Restaurant staff have come together with winemakers to get the boutique drops usually served here into people's homes.
100% of my business was selling to restaurants, so 100% of my business is gone. We've all had to look at a way in which we can sell direct to consumers.
Hi, Steve.
Businesses and consumers alike are turning to Australia Post like never before. 15 new distribution centres like this one in Melbourne are being set up across the country, and hundreds of staff are being hired to cope with demand.
We've seen over 300,000 new consumers try online shopping for the first time.
Alcohol parcels are up 168% on last year. Department store packages are up 473%. And parcels containing pharmacy goods are up 236%. The sheer volume, cuts to commercial flights and social distancing requirements in the warehouse means many packages have been delayed.
From a postal delay perspective, we are getting better every day.
But while parcels are up, the number of letters being sent has fallen dramatically, and Australia Post doesn't expect that to change, even after coronavirus.
As long as Australia's love affair with parcel delivery continues, Australia Post says all its services are safe. Jessica Longbottom, ABC News, Melbourne. To finance, and the Aussie dollar has continued to surge higher today as the inflation rate unexpectedly rose above 2%. Here's Alan Kohler.
The inflation rate beat expectations with a rise of 0.3% in March and 0.5% on the underlying rate. So the annual rate of inflation has put its head above the Reserve Bank target of 2%, which hasn't happened for about 5 years. But they won't be high-fiving down at Martin Place. The Governor, Philip Lowe, said last week it's quite likely that inflation will go negative in June. So today's data is the rear vision mirror. The windscreen has got the wipers going. The dollar didn't move when the CPI came out, but it did rise through the day and is now above 65 US cents. The exchange rate has recovered all it lost in the first 2 weeks of March, and it's happened while the US dollar has been rising as well, which means the rise against the euro has been 14% in a month. Extraordinary. And the US dollar has been rising despite this. The US economy is in far worse shape than it was during the GFC. On the share market, all was forgiven for NAB and the banks today. They had a huge session coming back from yesterday's grimness. Coles confirmed that it's having a second Christmas at the moment with a 12% lift in March quarter sales, but the market thought it might be a bit more, so the shares went down. And one of the world's biggest investment firms, America's Blackstone Group, has bought 10% of Crown Resorts, the casino operator, for $8.15 a share. So punters ran away from the pokies to buy some shares in the hope that 4 aces come up or something like that. The US market eased a bit last night and the oil price continued to jump about, up 16% last night after falling 14% yesterday. And that's finance.
In the AFL, Fremantle is investigating a social media video that shows 3 of its players partying, possibly in breach of distancing restrictions. It's particularly bad timing, with the AFL talking up its quarantine hub proposal and players raising concerns about being apart from their families for up to 20 weeks.
Western Australia's coronavirus restrictions were wound back on Sunday night, but some Fremantle players may have celebrated the news a little early. The Dockers are investigating Jason Carter, Luke Ryan and Michael Frederick to find whether they are in breach of restrictions. It's not good timing. Under the AFL's Hubs proposal, players who make the grand final could be away from their loved ones for 20 of the 21 weeks.
There are lots of players who have newborns. There are players that are expecting, or their partners are expecting kids. There are players with seriously ill family members.
If there's a world where basically you're going to have to decide between football or your family, I think some blokes are just going to have to choose family and not play.
Players are asking the AFL to revisit its proposal.
I'd be comfortable with playing if the weeks were reduced. So if we weren't maybe 8 weeks in a row, maybe it was 3 or 4 weeks.
Their stance has been met with criticism from other sports. Former Test cricketer Dean Jones tweeted, "We stayed overseas 3 to 4 months without families," while former tennis player Sam Groth tweeted, "Imagine having to travel away from home to get paid to play sport. It's unfathomable."
Players are effectively going to be locked up in a place for a long time, no matter which way you look at this. Without an ability to actually get out and about, they're not going to be eating strawberries and cream on the lawns of Wimbledon.
The Players Association insists it's early days in negotiations over the hubs, with a formal announcement not expected for almost 2 weeks. Peter Lusted, ABC News.
Carlton's Madison Prespakis says she was in shock when she won the AFLW Best and Fairest Award last night. The awards were conducted virtually, and while there wasn't a black tie dress code or a glitzy function, the backyard medal presentation was extra special.
To hear Gil sort of read out my name, and I had no idea what was actually happening at the time, and then I heard my name and I just didn't know if I was just won just yet, but I just started crying either way, and yeah, it was an awesome time, and to have my little sister as well present the medal was awesome.
19-year-old Prespakis, who won Rising Star honours last year, is the first teenager to win the prestigious award. Well, overeating is, for all of us, a constant risk on long days confined to home. But a golden retriever puppy in Adelaide has taken things to the next level, gulping down a bowl of pasta, fork and all.
Talk about biting off more than you can chew.
Come here, Dustin. Come here.
5-month-old Dustin was cock-a-hoop when he got his paws on a plate of ravioli from the Pitt family table. But he got more than he bargained for.
Straight away we're like, where is it? Like, is it in there? So like I've opened his mouth, had a look, can't see anything. Then we're like searching the floor, trying to find the fork.
Dustin was rushed to an after-hours surgery where an X-ray confirmed the worst.
If I didn't have my training, I would have been concerned that someone had doctored the photo. It was surprising. It's the first time I've seen a dog eat a utensil.
Having swallowed the fork prongs first, lucky Dustin was spared the knife. Instead, the utensil was retrieved from the retriever's stomach via the way it went in. The vet's intervention, an important fork in the road.
If it hadn't been seen, nobody would have imagined that a dog could swallow a fork. And yeah, there would have been some pretty serious trauma to that stomach.
No harm done, but no lesson learned.
He still climbs up on the bench, still pulls plates down off the floor and eats the kids' toast and all that sort of stuff, but I don't think he'll ever stop doing that.
The Pitt family is now on guard come mealtime. Matthew Smith, ABC News, Adelaide.
I wonder how much they had to fork out for that. Anyway, it's time for the weather now. More weather with Paul Higgins.
Oh, thank you, Mary. Well, it's cold and it's wet outside, and it's set to stay that way for a few days. In fact, it'll even be colder than originally thought, as you'll find out in a moment. The rain radar shows how the falls began overnight. Mostly light rain, apart from the northeast. More rain today, plus we've had thunderstorms popping up in the northern country, the northeast and into Gippsland. Falls Creek had by far the biggest total overnight. There it is there. And the downpours have continued there today. In fact, they've had up to 155 millimetres so far. It was relatively mild overnight with the cloud cover, down as low as 6 at Mounts Buller, Hotham and William. Today, Orbost topped the ladder with 24, but by lunchtime in the Wimmera and southwest, it was only around 11 or 12 degrees. Here in Melbourne, it peaked at 19.8 at 12:06, but by 1 o'clock it was down to 14, and right now in your soggy backyard, it is 11 degrees. And in case you missed it before, here's how much rain has fallen since 9 a.m. 33 millimetres at Ashwood, the biggest fall. It's now our second wettest start to the year on record. Adelaide's had 9 millimetres of rain today, in Canberra 16 millimetres, and a bit of rain down there in Hobart as well. Well, a cold front moved into Victoria today with this deepening low sitting behind it, and the coldest air, which is yet to come, is shown by that speckled cloud. Tomorrow, a pressure trough will move in. There it is there. And behind that, the coldest air coming right up from the south. We won't have as much rain as we did today, but the cold wind will freshen. Brisbane's in for late thunderstorms. In Sydney, rain and storms. More rain for Canberra. In Hobart, morning rain. Adelaide will have showers, but it will be sunny in Perth. Back home, that rain band will steadily move eastwards tonight, but then we have this other band of rain and showers moving in during tomorrow, reaching Melbourne in the afternoon. Cold tonight and cool to cold tomorrow. The snow level dropping to 900 metres in the afternoon. Thunderstorms with small hail, mostly near the southwest coast, and a fresh southwest wind. Damaging winds and heavy rain in this yellow area gradually easing tonight, and there's a statewide warning to sheep graziers. On the bays, a westerly wind, 15 to 30 knots. Gales on the west coast, strong winds on other coasts and the bays. Now, it's been bucketing down just the last hour or so around Melbourne, but that rain will ease as the evening goes on. It should be dry and even mostly sunny in the morning, then more showers in the afternoon, up to 3 millimetres in the city, 10 in our east, 7 to 14 degrees and a fresh westerly wind. Now, here's the shocker. 12 degrees now on Friday. Showers and small hail, 5 to 15 millimetres generally, 10 millimetres in our west, 25 in the east. Saturday, a few showers, especially over our southeastern suburbs, and 13. Sunday and Monday, a shower or two, still cool. Tuesday, 17, and Wednesday, mostly sunny, Mary.
Thanks for that, Paul. And Lee Sales is up next.